Welcome to another episode of the Looking After Nature podcast, where we hope to bring you close to nature and wildlife in Hampshire. My name is Andy Davison, and I'm here once again with my co-host, Carly Harrod. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Andy, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. So where are we today, Carly?
So today we are in the lovely village of Waltham. It's not that nice a day. It's a little bit misty and foggy, but it is still beautiful. And we're here today to do some bird watching with a member of our map review team, Tara.
Now, Tara's appeared in one of our blogs about gardening, hasn't she? And she certainly has a beautiful garden here. But you don't need a garden to birdwatch. You can spot birds from your balcony, front door, from your local green space.
Yes, birds can be found anywhere. So let's see what we can spot today.
Hi Tara, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yes, it's really nice to come. I've not been to your garden before. You're part of our map review team, aren't you? What do you do there?
Yes, I do public path orders in the map review team. So I divert footpaths, bridleways. Yeah.
So, but I mean, you've clearly got an interest in the countryside because look at your lovely garden. It's really nice here, isn't it?
Yes, we are really lucky with the garden. Nice big space. But like you say, you don't need the big space to be able to see the birds.
But I mean, I'm quite rural. Carly's right in the middle. Well, I say right in the middle of the city, but she's in Southampton. But you're on the edge of a village here, so it's quite good for birds here, isn't it?
Yes, yes it is.
So we're looking out. Say we're on the edge of a village. So you've got little paddocks here. It's a bit difficult to see because it's foggy today.
Yeah,
isn't
it really is misty. But the hedgerows are good. There's lots of birds in these hedgerows in between the paddocks.
And you've got, and I think, looking at the aerial photography, just to check out what it was like around here, you've got a strip of woodland over beside the road over there, haven't you?
That's correct, yeah.
And then looking back into the village as such, there's loads of big trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, there are plenty of trees, really well-established tall trees, so it's good. Look at owls at night time.
Yeah, tawny owls.
Tawny owls. And another one that just goes whoop.
Yeah,
I mean, little owl?
Yeah, that can be a little owl, yeah. I mean, they're quite difficult to tell apart sometimes, but the little owl does a little, as you say, a little piping call like that. Yeah. So, you know, it's always difficult to work out some of these out from song, just isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So, looking at your garden, you've got lovely thick hedges around here. You've got a nice pond here, actually.
Yep, that's a natural pond.
That's a natural pond?
It's a natural pond, although we haven't really had much in it as yet. So I'm hoping we might get some frogs, hopefully, maybe.
Oh, I don't doubt it. When did you put it in?
It's been a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years. But the birds like to drink out of the fountain bit, which is good.
Yeah, we can hopefully hear that on the tinkling away. But it is great for wildlife because, as you say, I mean, I got frogs the first year after I put it in, and you'll get newts. But it's a great water source. So you say you'll get birds coming and drinking from it. Do you get them bathing in it as well?
Yes, in that bottom bit.
Yeah.
They do bathe in that bit, which is good. And in the summer, when that buddleia is all out and bushy, they're in and out of it a bit more because I think they feel a bit more protected behind that. But obviously in the winter, it's all a bit sparse, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you've cut it back a little bit as you need to occasionally with some of your stuff in the garden, but yeah, but as I say, it's cover, which they quite like.
Yeah.
Totally you know, a pond in the middle of a paddock like that would have different types of bird probably, but they wouldn't feel so secure as popping into here. And it's actually one of the best things you can do for wildlife, is put a little pond in your garden.
Yeah, even if it's just a washing up bowl, I suppose, is just as good, isn't it?
Well, that's it. You know, I mean, any water source is great because, I mean, clearly some people don't have enough room to put a pond in.
No.
But any water source. So, I mean, I used to say, I mean, I've got an upturned bin lid, but I think probably, you know, that's an old-fashioned dustbin. And we have to change our references sometimes, don't we? You know, the fact that we talk about bin lids and stuff like that, and some people, what do you mean a bin lid?
Yes.
But it's basically a shallow metal bowl. So anything shallow, you don't want it too deep, because they need it probably at most an inch or so deep just to bathe in and drink in, so they can safely get in and out, so they don't fall in. And if it's too deep, they could actually probably drown in there and not get out. So you need a shallow bit, but a little shallow bowl of any sort, just with some water, just enough to drink or have a quick bath in. And you could almost do that on a balcony as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you got any bird boxes around?
I haven't, but my neighbour has got, I think they're sparrow bird boxes, the 3 that are all together.
Oh, like a little terrace house.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a terraced house.
Oh, I can see it on the tree house
on
over
the tree
there.
house, they've got that one. We've got a bird box at the top of the house that has blue tits in it. That's got a camera in it, so we see. And she sleeps in it at night time.
Yeah.
Nothing in it because my husband clears it out, and I don't know whether you should do that or not. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you should do. Yeah, I mean they recommend actually some Valentine's Days is a good time to clear them out.
Okay.
As a way of reminding you to do it, because that nesting material, the old nesting material, could be full of parasite eggs and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
And it's just good to clean them out now and then.
Yeah.
So they suggest that you actually clean them out on some Valentine's Day, but just before they start breeding again.
Yeah.
As you say, a lot of birds actually roost in them in the winter.
Yes.
Because they're nice and sheltered.
Nothing in it at all. She's just in there on her own as well. There's
so having
never
a bit- yeah.
male with her.
So having a bit of material in there, left in there over the winter, helps insulate them. And actually there's wrens, if it gets really cold, wrens, although they're very territorial, they'll gather together, and I think there's a record of 57 wrens in one bird box.
Wow.
You know, so I mean, I've had, certainly in some really harsh weather, because I've got about 8 bird boxes around the garden, because I'm a bit of a nutter. But I've had about 7 or 8 wrens going into one nest.
Wow. I didn't realise that wrens actually went in a box, because I was lucky enough to see, do they burst when they fledge? What do they call it when they...
Yeah, I know what you mean. It is fledging, but it's almost...
And they all sort of burst out of this, but they were all in between the logs, where my neighbour's logs were all stacked up.
Yeah.
They all went into there, but they must have come from... Do they nest in a hedgerow as well, or do they...
They'll nest in any cavities. And
Okay.
It tends to be in a nook or a cavity. And
Okay.
you know, if there's a hole in a log pile, as you say. See, they don't tend to use nest boxes. They might occasionally use an open-fronted nest box.
Okay.
So not one with a hole in the front, but one with an open front that the robins quite like using. And quite typically, I mean, if you sometimes see really cute pictures of people hanging up a teapot and the nest in a teapot.
Oh, yeah.
So any cavity like that, but they tend to build their own nest and fill it full of moss and stuff, so they have a little entrance hole. There's a pied wagtail flying over there. So they tend to not to use nest box for nesting in, but they use them for roosting in the winter.
Oh, okay.
And I think
Makes
we
sense.
passed on the path down to your garden. We passed a neighbour's nest box. He said he had nuthatches in.
Yes, there were nuthatches in there one year, and that was interesting to watch them feed, because the mum doesn't go into the nest as such. The baby comes out, pokes its head out to the...
Yeah, when they're bigger. I mean, clearly when they're tiny and they can't get up
Yeah.
to the nest entrance. They're a bit like woodpeckers in that. They're quite like woodpeckers in a lot of ways anyway. But they're quite funny because they're normally in natural nest holes, in trees. But if the hole's too big for them, they'll make it the right size by putting mud around the entrance until it's just the right size.
Oh, okay. Yes, that was quite a nice nest box to see, because it was on the pathway coming back and forth to the garden, so busy time.
So have you had anything else nesting in your garden?
These 2 fir trees in the garden, they have magpies in. I don't know if that's usual for magpies to nest in pine trees.
They'll nest in sort of tall hedgerows and trees, so no, I mean if it's the right place for them, they'll nest in it.
Yeah,
But they're quite funny because they have because most of the crows, because I remember the crow family,
yeah.
make like a stick nest, which is just a nest, the bottom bit. But magpies do a bit over the top.
Oh,
And
okay.
they cover the top in sticks as well. So you can normally tell a magpie, because it can be quite tall, about 1 foot or 2 tall where they build it up. So you can tend to tell a magpie nest.
We had a nest in the honeysuckle behind there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But we have done some cutting back, but we are going to let it all grow back a bit. But literally, this tree was quite busy with ivy.
Yeah.
So that's all year round, isn't it, the ivy?
Yeah.
And the little nest was in, which is quite low down really, but I think it was a blackbird. Do they have bluey eggs?
Yeah, thrushes tend to, song thrushes have really sky blue eggs. And blackbirds tend to have bluey eggs with some spots on them.
Ah, yeah, I think it was a blackbird's nest.
But you can normally tell the difference with a song thrush, for example, because I had one in my garden last year, and they completely line the nest with thick mud.
Oh, wow.
So you can normally see this really thick mud lining, and it lasts quite a long while. And actually, it's quite a good time of year to look for some of the old nests that.
Well, do they reuse them?
If a blackbird may reuse a nest if it's successful.
Okay.
They wouldn't use them next year. They use them in the same year.
Oh, okay.
So they might come back
They
to
have
that
a
one.
second
Brood.
brood.
Yeah, because they have 2-3 broods
Oh,
sometimes.
okay.
But if they're successful in that nest, they might come back to it. Yeah. So you've got loads of hedges around here. So I mean, I don't doubt you've probably got loads of nests in the hedges.
Yes.
But you don't necessarily know it.
No, no, you don't.
So things
Yeah.
like robins will nest in there.
I think we've got a lot of sparrows.
Yeah, because I mean, it's good that your neighbour's got that sparrow nest box up there because they've declined a little bit, and I think it's partly, I mean, it's partly down to food sources in the winter, where the almost all the seed sources cleaned out the fields. You know, there's not all the seeds in there in the winter, but also in the summer when they're breeding, all these houses around here, they would have been nesting up in the eaves.
Ah, yes.
And then everybody comes along and they replace their, you know, all these rotten boards where they can get in. They replace them with UPVC boards
Yeah.
and things like that. So there's a lot of lack of nest sites. So that sort of terrace, I say it's a row with 3 boxes together.
Yes.
Do they actually nest in there? Do you know?
It was only up last year, so I don't know whether they had anything. It was new last year, so whether they had anything last year for the first season, I don't know, but I'll definitely keep an eye out this year. And is it now that they'll start? Do they sleep in it as well, like blue tits do, or will they just start?
Do you know? I don't know with house sparrows. They might well roost in there. They're probably not together. And of course, blue tit's a little bit smaller, so it needs a bit more insulation. So
I'll
they
keep
probably.
an eye on that because it's in a good position to be able to see it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but of course you will get tits going in those nests as well, great tits and things like that.
Yeah.
Because sparrows are quite a bit bigger than blue tits, so you need a bigger nest hole.
Okay.
But nest boxes are fantastic in gardens, and you can easily put 1 or 2 up in your garden. In terms of placement, you know, so you know, for example, you got these little apple trees. Are these
Yes,
ones?
they are. Little coxes.
Do you get many windfall apples in the autumn?
Yes, unfortunately last year we didn't have any apples because the frost got all the blossom and
Yeah.
literally we didn't have any last year. But yeah, we do. Is it best to leave them on the floor?
Well, clearly you want to eat some, don't you?
Yes, but the ones that fall,
Yeah.
instead of collecting them up to make the garden tidy.
Well, absolutely, and a lot of the thrush family, like blackbirds, but this time of year you might have redwings and fieldfares, all those winter thrushes that come in.
Yes, I have seen a fieldfare before and that's been at the top of the house on the berries of the pyracantha.
Yeah, that's a good plant. Yeah, there's a good plant.
And I didn't know what that bird was. It was a really cold winter. I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before, but literally I had to look in a book
Yeah,
because I'd never seen this looking bird. It's a bit like a thrush or a blackbird, that size, but looked different. And it was one of those, what did you just call it?
fieldfare.
Fieldfare, that was it.
It's a lovely name, isn't it?
But they only come for a short period, don't they?
Yeah, they'll turn up in September, October time. There's not many in the country as far as I know this year. I don't know if it's milder because they come from Scandinavia, Iceland, some of them breed the redwings. There might be a couple of redwings breeding every year in Scotland, but they're not really a breeding bird in England at all. But they come across because they're coming away from all the snow and everything. So they'll turn up for the winter. And they do feed on the apples on the ground. They'll feed on the berries on the hedgerows. Actually, a good berry following plant is ivy.
Okay, yeah.
I've got masses of pigeons on my ivy at the moment.
Yeah.
But they tend to ripen later in the, after the autumn. So they're quite a good berry following plant for the sort of midwinter into early spring sort of period. So I mean, you quite often get loads of fieldfares on the ivy.
We've got starlings as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just have a quick look out there. We might go up to where your feeders are in a minute, actually. Because
Yeah.
your little garden we're in is a bit separate to the house, isn't it? It's quite funny.
Yeah, it is. It's a very unusual layout. There's a robin in the tree, my neighbour's tree just there.
Yeah, some birds you might see all the time, like blackbird and song thrush. And they're a thrush, for example. And as you say, when you saw the fieldfare, you didn't recognise it, but you thought, well, it's the same shape, and it's a little bit bigger than a blackbird.
Yes,
actually, isn't
yes. Yeah, it is. It's got a different colour head and body as well. Like his head was different to its body. It was something that I'd not seen in the garden before. I was very excited.
Yeah, and they've got a black tail with a grey rump, and they have got spots on the front, like you might expect a thrush to have. But it's got this what about references, like a nicotine sort of coloured, orangey brown wash with a pale belly.
That's right, yeah.
And a very black tail. So that's the way to learn birds really, is start looking in your garden and you'll see things like thrushes, blackbirds, robins. Now robin is a member of the chat family. So if you then go and look at something like a stone chat, they've got the same sort of shape and size. So they're sort of upright, aren't they?
Yeah.
They hop about. They've got a little thin bill, which is normally associated with sort of feeding on insects and stuff like that. So, a stone chat is almost pretty much like a robin, but coloured in different. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
Okay, I'm not sure I've ever seen a stone chat. So what about finches?
Yeah, so
we get the ones with the red head, they bullfinches.
Just a red on the face?
Like a red and black head. And then there's ones with yellow in it.
Yeah.
Is one a chaffinch, maybe?
There's a range of finches you might get here. Do you get goldfinches?
Yes, goldfinches.
With the gold in the wings?
That's right, yes.
Now they've got red on the face as well.
Ah, okay.
Now
there's green ones as well that look like a olivey green, not bright green.
And a bit of yellow in the wing.
Yeah.
That's a greenfinch.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, so they've got they've got quite a thick bill, like a big wedge-shaped bill, haven't they? They're normally eating seeds. They will eat insects and they'll feed insects to the young, but they tend to eat seeds.
We buy special Niger seed for them.
Goldfinches can, yeah.
It's got smaller slits in the feeder for them, and they're on that quite a lot, which is good.
Yeah. So you get, and again, once you learn what a finch shape looks like, you can then transfer, because we're talking about chaffinches. The females are quite brown, but the males have got like an orangey sort of wash to the breast, and they've got a green rump and white bars on the wings.
Okay.
But in shape, they're almost identical to another bird that comes down for the winter called a brambling.
Okay.
And there are quite a few in the country, and you might occasionally get one in your garden. I've had one fly over my garden, not actually in it. They like woodlands.
Okay.
So it's a bit distant from woodlands, but they've got a bright white rump. And again, they come down from Scandinavia. So let's have a quick look up in the tree over there. And there's just bits of leaf up there at the moment. But that's silver birch there.
Yep.
And they produce little tiny seeds. And birds like red poles and siskins love those.
We'll have to look out for that. I've never seen any of those two species of birds, I don't think. Siskins.
Siskins, yes, that's a lovely name, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they're a little tiny finch. They're smaller, I think, just a little bit smaller than a goldfinch.
Okay.
But again, they're greens and yellows. But a greenfinch is a much bulkier bird.
Yeah. We get the long-tailed tits as well, is it? On the fat.
Yes.
All tails, like 6
like
or
lollipops.
7. Yeah. Just a massive tail and body on a bit of fat that we put out.
I mean, my mum used to love those things. I mean, they're attractive little birds. They're like a sort of mix of pinks and greys and whites, aren't they? And they've got no sense of personal space.
No.
They crowd on there. I mean, most birds, when you see it, they go on a feeder. If another one comes too close to it, they'll be a bit aggressive towards it because they don't want them that close.
Or they wait till one's moved and then they come on, don't they? Whereas the tits just completely.
Yeah, the long-tailed tits absolutely bundle. And I've seen them actually in a bush. I could hear this little noise, this cheep, and I looked up inside this bush, and there's about 8 of them crowded along a stem. Crowding together, close together to keep warm, and that's the way they roost. And it's just all fluff and tails. Yeah, so they're lovely birds.
Yes, yeah, we get those.
And they're quite, they've got quite good family relationship. They've got a domed nest they make of cobwebs and bits of lichen. It's like a ball, and they'll put it in a hedgerow. They'll build it in a hedgerow. They don't put it in there. They'll build it in a hedgerow, and it's like a ball with an entrance.
Okay.
And it's quite flexible, so when their young start growing, it can expand a bit. And actually, after their first brood, quite often the young from the first brood help rear the second brood. So you get more than 2, more than the male and female going in. They've got quite a good family bond. Okay, so clearly, I mean, you've got loads of feeders. I can see it in your back garden, through the house, and I mean, your front garden at the moment, the neighbours have got them as well. But you've got these big cages around them. You've probably got squirrels here, have you?
Yes, we do. So yeah, that just enables the little birds. When I was talking about the long-tailed tits earlier, that's the one that they're all in. Lots of bodies in. But yeah, the squirrels come down. They do get my neighbour's ones, and she does put a little tray out. So we're not discounting the squirrels. They can eat off that tray.
So this one's like a big ball cage, and there's a fat block in the middle.
Yeah.
So clearly the little birds can get through to it, but hopefully the squirrels can't.
Yes, that's it.
Although I did once, my sister sent me a picture of this squirrel which had got inside the cage, and she said, "What do I do?" And I said, but she managed to get its way out. I mean, it had been able to squeeze between the bars, but your design with these it wouldn't have been able to get into this one.
They can get themselves into some tricky places I've seen on television programmes before.
Yeah. But this one here, it's got fat balls in it.
Yeah.
And it's got like a hopper system, so the fat balls drop to the bottom.
Yeah.
But actually, if something heavy like a squirrel goes on these bits, it shuts the door, doesn't it?
It does, and then they can't get to it.
Yeah. But it depends I mean, clearly squirrels can damage the feeders. I mean, your neighbours, they're not protected like yours ones, are they? But they're a bit of an issue with squirrels, do they?
Yeah. I think she likes to feed the squirrels.
But they're quite capable of taking them off the hooks and dropping them to the ground, and even running off with them sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah.
We've
got a nice network of telegraph wires to come across to get to the bird feeders as well.
So you're feeding with fat. There's a fat block here, and there's these fat balls here. Which birds go for those ones, have you found?
Well, the long-tailed tits go for the fat. Sparrows?
Yeah.
Robins, yes. Robins also go on the fat. And starlings.
Yeah.
We get a lot of starlings all fighting for it. And then we've got another bird feeder at the back that has the black Niger seed in. Yeah. And that's what the finches mainly go on.
So which bird, I mean, we were talking earlier about goldfinches in particular, like that, don't they? Because it's got little slits, isn't it? Clearly they need a little tiny beak to ferret in there and pull them out, don't they? So that's Niger seeds.
Yeah.
And that is a specialist one, particularly for the goldfinches. But siskins will like that as well.
Okay. Well, I need to look out for these siskin things, don't I?
Yeah. And this feeder, you've got, what's in this feeder?
Sunflower hearts.
Yeah.
And I think the finches like that just as much as the Niger seed, really. Anything that drops from it, I don't know what they discard from it, but birds that are on it, they eat from it, do drop things on the floor, and then things come round and pick up, like blackbirds and thrushes come around and pick up the bits that have been dropped.
And that's the thing, because I mean, I don't tend to bother too much with Niger, because I know the goldfinches really like the sunflower hearts. And when we say sunflower hearts, it hasn't got the shell of the nut of the seed around it, has it?
That's right, yeah.
So that's been taken away, because otherwise they'd open them themselves, and you'd end up with loads of sunflower shells around
all over the floor. Yeah. No, it's the hearts.
Now some people, they'll go for the cheaper seeds mixes, and they're a mix of, they've got maize flakes in and corn in it, as well as things like sunflower hearts. But it's a bit of a false economy, because the birds will sort through that until they find things like sunflower hearts that they like, and end up with loads of seed all over the floor, which the pigeons will eat a bit, but it can attract rats.
Yeah.
And some people worry about that.
So it's better to buy the good quality stuff that they're going to eat.
Yes. And the feeder empties less quickly.
Yeah.
Because they're not picking through. And pretty much the only bits, there's not much they don't eat, the sunflower hearts. There's not much mess down below, is there?
No.
And as you say, there's some birds, like the pigeons. Do you get pheasants in the garden at all?
Not in this garden. Down the bottom they do.
Yeah.
But this has got, because it's got the wall and the fence around it, we don't. But yeah, they pick up off the floor as well, don't they, pheasants?
Yeah, so your pigeons and your collared doves, and things like chaffinches prefer to feed on the ground.
Yep.
So they'll pick the stuff off the ground.
Oh, okay.
So it helps with things like rats in the fact that they tend to clear everything up. I mean, you might get the odd mouse and things like that. If it's a long way from the house, it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, I know some people worry about rats immediately around the house.
Yeah.
But if you pay a little bit more, it lasts longer, it's better value. The birds will eat most of it, and you'll get less on the floor. I see the neighbours using nuts as well.
Yes, we don't have much luck with nuts. They tend to sort of rot in the feeder. But she's had, there's a woodpecker that comes on the nuts he's been today.
Yeah.
And again, the squirrel comes down and has a little go at the nuts.
And I get the same problem with peanuts. You know, it used to be one of the things you used to put out all the time for birds, blue tits, and it used to be a thing about red onion bags, and red bags attract the birds in. Well, I wasn't sure about that myself. But the trouble is you put that's like a plastic bag, like an onion bag full of nuts, and you know, it's like a squirrel rip it open in minutes. But as you say, I've always found they just rot in there before they're finished.
Yeah.
So I just tend to feed with the fat blocks, fat balls, and the sunflower hearts. We can hear a big chatter. I don't know if it can be picked up with the microphone, but a big chatter of birds up in the tree up there. And that's actually goldfinches singing. Or calling, more likely. They don't actually sing is a territorial thing. There's a flock of them up there, and they tend to do this sort of calling rather than a full-on song at this time of year. But I can see some starlings up there as well.
Yep. And is that 2 pigeons or are they doves?
They're wood pigeons, those ones.
Wood pigeons.
And we had one calling earlier, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, that lopsided longer tail and they're buffy colour. That's a collared dove, that one.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a bird of prey.
And actually, it's like, I can hear a call of a starling up there. It's like a sew. They do they do mimicry as well. I mean, they mimic all sorts of birds. They've been known to mimic a 2-stroke engine.
Really?
Yeah, in the Out Hebrides, where before people got onto the mains, they'd all have their little generator in the shed. And the birds, they do this sort of pop, 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 mimicking the 2-stroke engine. Really weird. But the collared doves, they're called slightly different to the wood pigeon.
Okay.
And one of the part of the Latin name is decaocto, which means 18. And there's some Greek fable where instead of saying what they were supposed to be saying, you know, they said 18, 18. And that's the sort of rhythm of their call. Whereas the wood pigeons, they're supposed to be saying, my toes bleed, Betty.
Okay.
So yeah, it's quite funny. I mean,
I might have to listen to that next time.
It's ways of remembering birds. If you can remember, it's a bit like yellowhammers. They're supposed to say a little bit of bread and no cheese. You know, so it's different ways that people remember some things. There's a real cacophony of birds around here, isn't there?
They're in a really good sing-song.
And I can hear quite a few sparrows around here as well. You sent me a little video the other day, didn't you, of a bird beside one of your feeders?
Yes, it was a wet Sunday, and I looked out the window, and it was a bird of prey. I didn't know what it was, but I think you said it was a
Sparrowhawk.
Sparrowhawk, but it looked like a juvenile, and it was very wet, but it was just waiting, but there was no sign of any little birds at all. And then it moved off the fence by the bin up to the feeders and stood on top of the feeders. For quite some time it waited, kept shaking its head because it was all wet, but it didn't get any breakfast that morning because none of the little birds came. They must have spotted it, because I think they call and warn each other, don't they?
If they see them, yeah, they'll go. There's certain calls. You know,
sometimes if a cat goes past, you can hear the birds all
calling, because there's a predator about,
warning,
about.
saying.
And they sometimes will mob a bird of prey or an owl in a bush, and it's almost, I can see you. There's no point trying to get me. I can see you, attract other birds, get as many birds as they can to recognise where the bird of prey is. Because the sparrowhawks are ambush predators. You'll see them, you know, these feeders here, they might have a set route they fly. They're all the bird feeders are. And they'll do a circuit, but they'll come whipping over the top of this hedge and then go shooting for them. So they're taken by surprise.
Right.
And you say yours was a juvenile. It was probably a male.
Okay.
Well, it was a male because, you know, the size of it.
Yeah.
It probably was a youngish male, but certainly at least born at least last year, if not before. But the males, as they get older, they get more orange on the front. They go quite orange. And they've got fiery yellow-orange eyes. Yeah, lovely birds. But the females are much bigger. They're almost double the size of the male.
Oh, are they?
And the females will be hunting. They won't hunt here because it's too tight and you've got to be quite acrobatic to whip around these little hedges and gardens. But they'll be hunting out in the main big fields. So they split where they hunt.
Got a great tit, I think, up there. Is that a great tit?
Yeah, that's right. Dark black head, big white cheek patch. And they've got a black line going down the belly.
Yeah.
And they are bigger than the blue tits and things.
Yeah, I didn't mention them, but they do feed on the feeders as well.
Yeah. And there's goldfinches sitting up on the tree there waiting to come down.
Hopefully they'll... Oh, one's gone in my neighbour's garden. Yeah, they're starting to come down now because we've moved.
We're over the other side of the garage.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of collar doves up there, look.
Oh yeah.
They're sort of buffy, sort of grey colour. And they are, I mean, doves are well known, sort of birds of love and all that sort of thing. But they're very quite, most of the year you'll see two together like that. Sometimes you get flocks. But they're very quite close, aren't they?
Yes.
And they'll breed throughout the year. They don't always breed just in the summer.
And they breed, they make a nest, do they?
Yeah, they a little
high up in a tree, or
not necessarily. I've had them about 6 foot, maybe a little bit higher than that sometimes. I've had them in my garden a few times last year, and they're all about head height. But it's a little stupid little thin stick nest.
Oh, okay.
You'd think it wouldn't survive any time at all. Goldfinch is having an argument over there.
Yeah.
And their eggs are pure white. So we've got a robin sitting at the top of this tree.
Oh yeah.
Let's just be
You can actually see him.
Yeah, get quiet for a little bit, see if we can pick him up. So it's a lovely song, it's a lovely warbling song, isn't it?
Yes. Is it just one?
Yeah, yeah. Now they can be quite territorial throughout the year because they need to defend a feeding territory.
There's another one just come.
Oh yeah, there's two there.
So whether you'll come and see him off.
It might be the female. Female robins do sing a little as well. It's not only males that sing sometimes. So that they defend the winter territory for their food resource as well as a breeding territory.
Okay.
But I had in my garden last year and the year before 2 robin nests at the same time. And I'm really sure, it's difficult to tell without having them marked in any way, but it was 1 male with 2 females. You know, so it's funny old game sometimes with birds and breeding birds.
And they're all sparrows that we can hear now, is it?
Yeah, all that chip, chop, chip, chip, chip. That's house sparrows. There's a couple of these little brown birds, brown and grey. That's a dunnock.
Oh, is it? I always get those mixed up with the sparrows. They look very similar, don't they?
Yeah, they've got a thin bill like a robin's got. So they haven't got the thick bill for eating seed like a house sparrow. And one of the old names is hedge sparrow.
Oh, that's right.
But they're not related to sparrows whatsoever. Now they've got really weird breeding strategies.
The dunnock.
The dunnock, yeah. Where you might have 1 male with 3 females, you might have 3 males with 1 female, you might have 3 females and 2 males.
And how can you tell the female from the male apart then?
You can't.
Oh.
I mean, I'm a bird ringer, and in the hand, you have to blow their feathers aside and look at quite intimate places, and even then they're quite difficult. You know, so they're no different at all in terms of plumage. It's a bit like the robin; you can't tell them apart.
No.
But
then other birds, you can. So like a pheasant, for example.
It's completely different, yeah.
Yeah, and ducks.
Yes, absolutely. And quite often that's to do with the males have all the colour and the spectacular because they need to attract the female.
Okay.
The female wants to be dark and brown because she sits on the nest, so she doesn't want to be found.
So that's a dunnock there.
Yep, that's the old dunnock sitting up there.
Oh, okay.
Little brown and grey. Creeps around like a mouse sometimes.
He does look so similar to sparrows. So where's a house sparrow then?
There was one up in the hedge up there just now. But they've got a big... It's the bill is the different thing.
Oh, and they've got a little bit of white on their wing, have they? Are they house sparrows up there? It's true.
Yeah, those are house sparrows. up the
Okay. I
top
can
of
see
that,
the difference now that they're both together.
Yeah. And house sparrows are different in colour. The males have got black on grey on the head and a black little bib below the chin, and the females haven't got all that colour on the head. So, I mean, some species they are totally the same. You cannot even tell them apart in the hand, and sometimes they're quite different colours. And it's normally the male that's got all the colour. Although there are some birds, I mean, you wouldn't get them in your garden. There's a couple of wading birds. One's called a phalarope,
Okay.
and there's a it's the female has got all the colour, and the male's drab because the males sit on the eggs.
Oh, okay.
So they need to be a bit drabber to be hidden. So that, and actually, what happens is the female does all the courtship and lays the clutch for the male, and then just leaves into it.
Wow.
And they've been known to actually, lay a clutch for a male in Scotland and then go to Norway and breed over there as well.
Wow.
So
that is unusual.
It is quite unusual amongst the birds. There are a few birds that
Yeah.
are like that. Well, thanks for welcoming us to your garden, Tara. It's absolutely a lovely garden you've got here, and it's good to see all these birds here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have human beings in my garden.
I know, it's
To
quite
see the
odd, isn't
team,
it?
to see the people that work in my service, because I've not seen people for ages. It's been lovely to have you.
Wow, I just love all the little birds in this garden. They're just amazing. There's so many.
Yeah, and when you look, when you start looking, it really is quite amazing the difference you can get, even in, quite an urban garden sometimes. Because I mean, in your garden, you get quite a bit as well, don't you?
I get quite a bit, but they are generally just in the hedge because I've got 2 cats. But it's certainly nothing like this.
Yeah, it's fabulous to see the range of diversity, and the more you look, the more you learn. That's the good thing about
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
Do
we
you
talked about-
feed the birds in your garden, Andy?
Well, of course I do. I mean, I'm nuts about birds, you know that. So I've got quite a few feeders around. I've got about 8 bird boxes up. So yeah, I do feed them in the garden. And actually, I've got set up so I can see them from where I work in my little home office, which is, brightens my day all the time.
So, are you ready for another one of Carly's fun facts?
I'm not sure if I'm ever ready for a fun fact from you, Carly, but let's go ahead, shall we?
Okay. So, did you know that birds' feet don't get cold?
Well, that's not strictly true, is it?
Well, it's not strictly true, but the surface temperature of their toes may be barely above freezing, even as the bird maintains its core body temperature above 38 degrees. But most birds don't succumb to frostbite because there's so little fluid in the cells of their feet, and their feet are mostly tendons and bones with little muscle or nerve tissue. And did you know that some birds have a counter-current heat exchange system in their legs?
Yeah, I know the concept. It's a bit like a heat exchanger on the back of a fridge, isn't it?
Yeah, so the blood vessels going to and from the feet are very, very close together. So blood flowing back to the body is warmed by the blood flowing to the feet. So the newly cooled blood in the feet lowers the heat loss from the feet, and the warmed blood flowing back into the body prevents the bird from becoming cold. And also, because the bird's circulation is so fast, the blood does not remain in the feet long enough to get cold.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's part of the problem with the bird in the fact that most birds don't have much in the way of feathers on their legs. So they've got bald feet and legs, so they can lose a lot of heat from them. So that's clearly one way of getting around it, isn't it?
Yep.
But there is another little fact I can give you.
Okay.
Because, goldcrest, the little tiny birds.
Yep.
Yeah, so most birds, when they are brooding their eggs, so like a robin will lay about 5 eggs, and quite often the female will lose the feathers on her breast, so the skin of the robin will sit right close to the eggs, so they can transfer the heat across. Well, a goldcrest, which is a tiny little thing, can lay up to 12 eggs, and people have often wondered how they brood those eggs and get the heat into them. But they've got quite a loose nest. It's almost like a flexible bag made of moss and lichen and bits of web, and they'll put all their eggs in there, and they've discovered that actually what they do is they paddle their legs in amongst the eggs and then pump blood into the legs.
Ah, so it heats up all the eggs at once?
Absolutely. So it almost turns off your heat exchange system and turns it to its advantage.
Yep, so my fun fact is not strictly true for all birds. I hope you have all enjoyed this episode of Looking After Nature. We have a really interesting blog post this month on a beginner's guide to birdwatching that has been done by Birdwatch Solent, so check out our YouTube channel for that one. And we'd love to hear from you with any comments or thoughts, and if there's anything you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, you can let us know by checking out our social media pages.
For now, thanks again for listening. I'm Andy Davidson.
And I'm Carly Howard. See you next time.